الهيئة العامة للسياحة والآثار. ملتقى السفر والاستثمار السياحي.
Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to start. This is the Destination and Branding and Marketing Workshop. I'm Tom Bunkle from Yellow Railroad International Destination Consultancy in Scotland in the UK. And the things that we do are destination branding, marketing strategy, place shaping, destination management planning, as you can see up here, and responsible tourism development. This is just a bit of background on me. I'm Managing Director of Yellow Railroad. My background, I was Chief Executive of the National Tourism Board of Scotland. I worked for the Government Tourism Office of the UK in the USA and Scandinavia and Southeast Asia. And I now run Yellow Railroad, which is a global destination consultancy. And I also write and lecture on those issues. We've worked all over the world. We work all over the world. Here are some of the places that we've worked. Today, and please, I would like to make this as interactive as you would like. So if you are feeling like you want to shout and ask questions or participate, please do. I will ask you some questions, so I'd be grateful if you would help me by responding and participating. But today what I am going to cover, and it's quite an ambitious scope, because I've been asked to cover branding and marketing. We'll start with definitions. We'll look at branding, product versus tourism brands, do's and don'ts of branding, brand management, some case studies, and then looking at marketing, which is separate from branding, market segmentation, marketing tactics, marketing in the digital era, online with the internet, and then credibility. And then, if we have time, discussion. But before we start, I just want to get you thinking about how fast and how far we've come in a very short time. So just over 30, 35 years ago, NASA made its first spaceflight. BMW put the first computer in a car. And most importantly, the first PC, the first personal computer, was launched by IBM. Now, the majority of people, certainly in this country and in most countries, have never known a world without computers. But just 30 years ago, they were not commonplace. It took, in the 1950s, this was a computer. It took a whole room to power the musical notes in a birthday card. You know these birthday cards that play music? So just think, they've been miniaturized the process to such an extent. So my thinking is, what's going to happen? Even in 5 years' time, what will our world look like? We now have the Google Glass has gone. It didn't work. But now we have these glasses coming on the market, which will put holograms in front of you so you can see exactly what somebody else is seeing. If you have a problem with this, if I have a problem with this microphone, so I can put on glasses and a technician in another country can take me through it and he can see what I can see and we can fix it. So this is going to be an amazing piece of technology. And, you know, talking of travel, Richard Branson is already selling space trips for $200,000. So things are going to change dramatically, largely because of online digital technology and customer-driven as opposed to producer-driven. We're all now taking charge, taking control of the development of products. But let's now have a quick look at definitions so we know what we're talking about of branding and marketing. Now, the definition of branding, there are many different ones, but I'm going to give you this one, which is a brand is the sum of all the associations, feelings, attitudes, and perceptions that people have related to both the tangible and intangible characteristics of a company, a product, or a service. Now, I'll come back to that in a minute. That was a brand expert, Philip Kotler, who's an academic and practitioner. But that's different from marketing. Marketing is the management process responsible for identifying, anticipating, and satisfying customer requirements profitably. Very important. And that is the definition by the UK Chartered Institute of Marketing. But I'm going to give you a very simple definition for the rest of this talk. And I think I'm going to say branding is who you are. It's your personality. It's what makes you, you. It's how your friends would define you. Whereas marketing, I'm going to say, is how you communicate this to your customers. So that's the distinction that is often used in tourism, and that's what I'm going to use today. Branding is who you are. Marketing is how you tell other people who you are. Sorry. So let's have a bit more look at branding in detail. This is what we're going to go through. What is a brand? What is a destination or tourism brand? We'll look at the difference between products and tourism brands. How do we form impressions of other countries? Look at some of the do's and don'ts in forming a brand. A quick look at logos and slogans, brand management, and brand communications in action. Some case studies. So what is a brand? I've defined it already. And there is one other definition, which I think is an old-fashioned one, which is very functional, a name, a term, a design symbol, or a feature that identifies one's seller's goods or service as distinct from those of others. This was the American Marketing Association definition, which I think is a very lame and not a very good definition, because as you saw earlier, I preferred the emotional one that talks about the associations and the feelings and attitudes that people have towards something. So I'm going to use this emotional brand. But just thinking about the functional brands for a minute, one of the world's most famous brands, Coca-Cola, look at these two ads. Do they tell you anything about it? When you look at this, does it tell you anything about the characteristics of Coke? No. It just says it's Coke, it's a drink. Whereas what they've done more recently is add an emotional dimension. It's about spending time with your family. It's about being cool. It's about being a sports star in Japan. It's about these Japanese people drinking. It's making Coke cool. It's attributing values and feelings towards the product. So that's what I mean about the difference between emotional and functional. And we have to do that with our own countries as well. I like this, right? David Ogre, who is a great advertising expert from the States, he said, any fool can put on a deal. We can always sell something, but it takes genius, faith, and perseverance to create a brand. And again, Philip Kotler says, everything is a brand. Coca-Cola, Porsche, New York City, United States, Madonna, and you, yes, you, even you are a brand. So hopefully I'm building a picture for you of what we're about to talk about. But what are the benefits of a brand? As I said, a brand is your personality. It's what makes you different and distinctive from everybody else and makes you memorable. So imagine if your best friend or one of your friends was to describe you. Somebody said, well, what's he like? You would hope that he would say in a very few words what you were like so that you were recognizable. And that is giving you a personality. You are different. At first glance, we look the same, but we have different personalities. And it's the same with a city, with a country, with a region. And sometimes, as people, we can be happy. Sometimes we can be grumpy. But our core is usually an extroverted personality or an introverted personality or a really happy person or quite a miserable person. We are all different, but we can have different phases within our personality. So while we might be a happy person, we can sometimes be less happy. So the brand can have those variations. But at the end of the day, it has to distinguish us from our competitors and thereby build loyalty and ideally enable us to charge a premium price for our services. And I want to give you an example of two airlines, British Airways and Virgin, which do the same thing. They both fly from the same place to the same place, London, New York, London, Tokyo. They're safe. Their safety record is equally good. Their punctuality record is equally good. And they charge the same price. So why would you go on one rather than another. You're not getting a price break. There's no difference. When you start looking at what they stand for, you see British Airways is a bit more traditional, conservative, formal, not as exciting as Virgin. People tend to wear a suit and tie, and it has a blue colour, whereas Virgin has a reputation, a brand that is more unconventional, innovative, it's more fun, it's for younger people, red colour, and people don't wear suits. Now, I'm exaggerating to make a point, but I think you can see that what's happening here is that the same product is developing a different character, and that's what the brand is. Another example was Pepsi actually tastes better than Coke. That's objective fact, because in blind tests, when people were not allowed to see what they were drinking, they tested Pepsi and Coke, and 51 preferred the taste of Pepsi, and only 44% preferred Coke. But in the open test, when they could see what they were drinking, they changed their minds completely. 23% only preferred Pepsi. A whopping 65% preferred Coke. Now, what's going on there? I think, to me, it says it's about the brand. You know, it's not that they're the same like Virgin and British Airways, they're actually different. When we don't know what we're tasting, we prefer Pepsi. But when we know, we go for Coke. Now, there's something going on there about the power of the brand, and I think we can do that with countries as well. But I'm going to put these things up and ask you a question. So please, if you feel like participating, which of these would you say is a brand? A product, a logo, slogan, image, marketing campaign, any ideas? Who thinks it's a product? Is it? You think logo? Okay. All of it. Okay. Right. Logo, all of it. Any others? Which one? Product. Okay. Any others? Okay, slogan, campaign. Okay, right, so we've already got a different view. I'm going to tell you that I don't believe that it is any of those. It's this one. Because you remember what I said about the personality. And I think when you say logo, a lot of people will say brand. A bit better? That a brand is a trademark, because in many languages it translates directly as a mark, a trademark. But I would argue, I may not be right, but I would argue that it's this. It's the spirit or the essence, just like your personality. That's why I talked about people, that gives you a competitive identity, an identity that allows you to be different and compete in the international marketplace. And that's what you're buying. And that makes us different, and it makes us stand out. Now, a logo is an important element, but I'm going to argue that the logo comes, and we'll talk about that in a minute, a long time after you have identified who you are. Because in a way, a logo is marketing. It's like, remember I said, it's how you communicate who you are. So let's just take it a bit further. What is a destination brand for a country? Now here, how many of you can identify which of these countries are Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam? They're all countries with rich cultures, fabulous food, great beaches, lots of similar things. So how would I choose one of those over another? I mean, do we even know where they are? There we are. But that's maybe quite easy. What about Europe? Slovenia, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Austria. Where are we? I come from Europe, and I still struggle to figure out which is Slovakia and which is Slovenia. So the point I'm making is the world is a very, very big place, a very competitive place. And how, if we don't know what our personality is, how can we stand out and make a difference? And I'm going to tell you why now I think we should brand a destination. I'm quoting from Simon Anholt, who is a real expert on branding, and he says, in this globalized world in which we live, every place has to compete with every other place for a share of mind, share of income, share of talent, share of voice. Not just for tourism, but to sell your products, to do international diplomacy. And unless we can come to stand for something, for values, we stand little chance of being remembered long enough to compete. And most of us, this is the killer phrase to me, most of us spend no more than a few seconds each year thinking about a country on the other side of the world. So, a few seconds. I come from Scotland. How many people here think of Scotland every day? No, seriously? You studied there? Okay, wow, where? Glasgow, wow, okay, very nice, very good. But that, do you know what? That's brilliant, because very few people ever think of Scotland. So you went there, where did you go all over, or where? I'm waiting for Edinburgh, because that's where I live, did you? Okay. But anyway, okay, apart from those who've been there, how many of you think about Scotland once a week? Once a month? Once a month? Oh, because you're a football fan. Okay, well, there's a very good knowledge in this audience then, but okay, but apart from that, once a year. See, the majority of the audience doesn't even think about my home country once a year. Oh, but you see the point. Unless we know what it's like, you know because you're a football fan, you know because you studied there, you know because you've been there. But that's really important. So it's, unless we always seem exactly like ourselves, like the Scotland you discovered when you studied there or when you visited, then there's little chance those few seconds will ever add up to a preference to buy our products, a desire to go and visit us, an interest in our culture, or if we were prejudiced against the place, a change of heart. And I'm going to quote from, actually, this is a bit cheeky, but I'm going to quote from myself here. This is a destination brand. It's those core characteristics that make us distinctive and memorable, that give us our personality. It's this enduring essence, not the product, the marketing campaign or the logo, the essence that makes us different. And importantly, with countries, it's the way people see us more than the way we present ourselves. We can't manufacture a country. And it's how we nurture and develop and present our core characteristics to our audiences that enable us to establish our reputation and reinforce it. Now, that's a lot of words, but let's just look at a few pictures. So this is what we're looking at. We want to be the blue fish here. We want to be seen to be different, because all these others are the same. How do we choose? We want to be distinctive, different, and memorable. And now let's just have a quick look at the difference between product. By that I mean consumer products like food or drinks or toiletries or bathroom products, whatever. And I keep using Coke because it's a famous brand, so it's products versus countries. Do we own the product we manufacture like Coke? Yes, we do, don't we? We can change it. But do we own the country and its reputation? No, it's there. Have we control over the manufacturer of our country's image? No. Sorry, what's it? We can't control the destination.
It's the Coca-Cola company that owns the product, obviously, so yes, they can change the product if they wish to, whereas a country can't just change itself. Is that the distinction?
Thank you for that clarification. Yeah, my point is, for manufactured products like Coca-Cola, we own it, we could control it. For a country brand, we don't own it because it's there, it's been there for centuries. We can't control it because we have millions of people, we have so many different things. We can't control very much the quality of the experience our visitors receive. To some extent we can. Coke is always the same recipe, the same formula, but a visitor will experience a different experience every minute of every day. Maybe they have a bad experience at immigration or a bad experience with a taxi driver. They have a lovely experience with a hotel receptionist, a lovely experience with a tour guide. Then they meet somebody in a shop that they have a bad. So we're getting different experiences of the place every day, rather than Coke is always the same. We can't control the distribution of the country message, but we can of Coke. We can't control the way people see our country totally. We can't vary. If Coke makes a new product like Coke Vanilla, if it doesn't sell, they can change it tomorrow. They make Coke Zero. You can't do that with a country. The country is still there. Its history, its culture, its heritage, its people. You can't change the people. Apart from maybe Dubai and Las Vegas have totally changed their brand. But generally, you can't. But so let's think how we form impressions of other places. Well, the brands that we export, again, I come back to Coca-Cola and things like that. The way we promote ourselves for trade, tourism, inward investment, our domestic and our foreign policy. Iconic public figures like Nelson Mandela almost single-handedly changed the image of South Africa. Events that we run, the World Cup changed the image of South Africa. It's coming to Qatar very shortly. How our citizens behave when abroad and how they treat strangers at home. So if I've never met anybody from Saudi Arabia before, but I meet a student in Glasgow, my impression of Saudi Arabia will be very much dependent on how I interact with you. If you're a great friendly guy, I'll think all Saudis are great friendly guys. So, we're all ambassadors. About the built and natural environment, the historic and the heritage that we have, the way the world covers us in the media. We get different types of coverage on BBC, CNN, Al Jazeera. All cover things differently, so we get different impressions. The membership of international organizations, other countries we associate with, and how we behave culturally, and our sporting stars and successes. All these things contribute to the brand. And when we're developing a brand, and I must say at this point, I'm using international examples. I'm very aware that when it comes to tourism, that the big opportunity here, what you want to develop is domestic leisure tourism. So international tourism is not such a big issue, but the same principles of branding and marketing apply. So what we need to do in branding, we need to audit our destination. What have we got that people would like? And we went this morning, we had a fabulous short visit to, I hope I'll pronounce this correctly, Al-Daraya. Daraya. Fabulous. I had no idea it existed. It changed my impression of Riyadh in 10 minutes visit. So we look at what we've got and then we say, well, who would be interested in that? So hopefully Saudis would be interested. Hopefully expats living in the country, Europeans would. I don't think Chinese people or a lot of African people would be interested in that kind of heritage. So you have to figure out who would like what we've got. We do an audit. We look at the essence of what we have. Then we need to research our potential customers. What do they think of us? Do they like that sort of thing? How do they compare it with Petra, for instance, or things like that? Where do we stand? We then need to make sure that the way we're talking about our own country, we get buy-in from our own residents. Because the last thing we want to do is talk about our country in a way that does not make us happy. We must be happy in the way it's promoted. We then need to look at a competitor analysis. But we have to be honest. And I work all over the world, and I see so many countries telling people what they want them to think, rather than being honest and saying what they have. Because, for instance, let's take Al-Petra in Al-Ardan. There's no way that from the UK I could say some of our Stonehenge Heritage Memorial is anything like that. But some of our local politicians will pretend it's even bigger. You know what so we must be honest when we talk about what we have, because in the days of the internet, people will soon pick up if we're not telling the truth. So that is a big issue. And we're proud. We're very proud of what we have. But there's a difference between pride and dishonesty. That then makes us distinctive, and we're memorable. So that's kind of technical bit. The risks are that different stakeholders who own different products or who are powerful politically, sometimes I've experienced this, push us in one direction, or we have to political compromise and we don't think clearly in the way we present things. And if we don't think clearly, then the message we convey will be bland, it will be indistinct, and ultimately forgettable. So the important thing is that we are clear and honest with our customers, potential visitors. And this is a great line from Wally Ollins, I think. We don't change people's perceptions of a country with advertising. We change perceptions by finding the truth, finding an idea that embraces that truth and putting it through everything we do in imagery, design style, brochures, logo, website, and behavior. I'm going to go very quickly through this because this is a bit technical, but it's about how to build the brand from the bottom up, looking at the main assets. What do visitors like? We do our SWOT analysis. What do they feel about the place? We do that through consumer research. We then develop a personality for the brand, which is the same way that I said your friend would talk about you. This is the way you want to be seen. And we have to build a competitor analysis in there so that we're not saying the same things as our competitors. And then we develop a positioning statement that just is a summary of our strongest, most competitive points. And then we get to this DNA, or the brand essence, the 3 core values. I'm going to go on because I think that's quite technical, and I'm happy to talk about that later, but let's look at a couple of other things. I said I'd talk about logos and slogans, and often you find people develop logos for a company, for a product, or for a destination, and think that's it. And to me, the logo is the last thing you think about. Theoretically, and I stress theoretically, a logo should be the summation of what you offer, of your personality. Very, very hard to do that in a simple, striking image. So I think the 3 things we need to do with a logo are we have to make it simple. Because if it's very cluttered, we'll never recognize it. It has to be recognizable. Do you know the Nike tick from the Nike running shoes? So simple. Imagine if they had 4 of those and they crossed, you wouldn't remember them. Simple. Secondly, clear. Simple and clear are very similar, so that it's recognizable. Attractive, yes. Now, you can argue that's subjective. You know, an attractive logo to him might not be an attractive logo to him, but most people will be roughly in agreement. But most importantly, once you have designed a logo for your company or your product, you need to use it and use it consistently, because the value comes from consistent use. And even if it's not the best logo, if you keep using it and keep using it, it's the fact that it gets recognized, that's where the value lies. And one client of mine said to me once, how long does a logo last for a national tourism board? And I said, usually the lifetime of one chief executive, because the new chief exec comes in and goes, right, I'm going to change the logo because it makes it look as if I'm going places. The worst thing you can do, because that company has built up so much recognition and equity in the logo that they're throwing it away. I'll give you an example. I used to be chief exec of the Scottish Tourist Board. We rebranded and we got a new logo. Now this logo is a thistle. I don't know if you know what a thistle is, but it's a flower, very prickly, beautiful flower. It's our national flower. And the design company, it's this thing here. The design company said to me, well, you see, the blue is the blue of the sea. The green is the green of the hills. The purple on this bit, this is the purple of the heather on the hills, the flowers on the hills. And I said, look, not one consumer who looks at this is going to recognize that. But it looks nice, it's simple, it's clear, it's clean, and it's quite pretty. We'll buy it. But you see my point? If you try and explain too much in a logo, you lose people. And then the other thing that I have a bit of an allergy to is the slogan. Too many people think slogans are marketing campaigns. The best I've seen were Ireland's, the ancient birthplace of great times. It says heritage and good fun in the same slogan. Croatia used to have a slogan, the Mediterranean as it once was. In other words, less congested, lower prices, more relaxed. Well, that's all changed. Tanzania didn't have an emotional slogan, but it was the land of Kilimanjaro, Zanzibar, and Serengeti. You can remember those. They're emotive descriptors, but it's not about feelings. And New Zealand, I think, has the best ever, which is 100% pure. It refers to their nature, their environment, their food products, and they manage even to combine their slogan in a logo. They then extended that to their natural products, 100% pure honey. Some of the least effective are Belarus, hospitality beyond borders. Sounds like it's been designed by the board, by a committee. It means very little, and anybody could say that. Bulgaria, unique in its diversity. Well, where isn't? You need to paint a picture, and that doesn't paint a picture. Zambia says, let's explore. Canada says, keep exploring. And everybody tends to say they're the world's best kept secret. So if we can't get an emotional slogan that really says something powerful like this or this, then a descriptive one like this is good, but please avoid things that could be anywhere and mean nothing. So I'm going to flip over brand management very quickly, because this is about just appointing a manager for your company's brand or or the tourism board's brand. You need champions, you need advocates, you need to develop a toolkit, and you need to train people, and you need to measure how successful you are. So I'm going to jump over that, but people often say to me, when should we rebrand? And my argument is, no country should ever rebrand. Why? Because, as I said, you have your history, your heritage, your culture, your people going back thousands of years. And who are we to say we're going to change that? But we can refresh the way we talk about our country. And you go along this line here from being fashionable to famous. When you become familiar, you're starting to get brand fatigue. So this is the point at when you should start thinking about refreshing but not rebranding. When people are so familiar that they're almost not noticing you anymore. So branding isn't rocket science. No, it's very. It's no substitute for substance. If we're a country that we can't offer, we can't brand or market our way out of what we don't have. Our brand exists with our history, heritage, our culture, and it's not budget dependent. Communicating a brand is what costs. So people's perception is more powerful than the reality very often. People are less interested in us than we think. Those 3 seconds, remember those few seconds we mentioned, and we can't avoid the truth. So we have to be clear, focused, and honest. But let's just have a little bit look at a few case studies. Brand communications in action. This is an ad that Al Rodan ran in, I think, in this region, but I think it was mostly in Lebanon. Would that be? Can anybody tell from that? Yeah, but they were targeting. They were running this advertisement in Lebanon, I think, and in the region. So, but have a look at what they're saying here, or the images, and then look. They say it's friendly, welcoming, lots to do. Does that say that to you? Yeah, I think it does. Yeah, I think that's a good one. India. Now, this was mostly in Europe. Incredible India. Exotic, mysterious, cultural. Does that say that to you? Oh, good. It does to me. I didn't know if it would to you with the desert there. Morocco. Morocco says there are countries that nurture the soul. Its brand values are tranquil. Oh, okay, I thought they were calling it cultural. I think that says that, doesn't it? Yeah, so you can see how they're translating these brand values into images. Qatar, historic and modern. Does that do it? I'm seeing some nodding, yeah. Interesting one here, Oman. In France, Oman presents itself as exotic, cultural and historic. In Australia, it has a slightly different take and it presents itself as dramatically scenic, cultural and adventurous. So you see where the brand values are coming out quite differently. And New Zealand, which is the world leader in nature and adventure tourism. How many people have done this bungee jump? But how many people would like to do it? One, okay. So maybe we're not in the market, but I think New Zealand has that image. I'm going to now just take you very briefly through Kuwait. We worked in Kuwait, or I worked on a branding project in Kuwait a couple of years ago. And the objectives we were given were, the target markets were Kuwait citizens and residents. And I think there's a lot of similarities between what Kuwait was trying to do and what Saudi Arabia is trying to do in terms of the markets and the domestic tourism. So Kuwait citizens and residents, particularly younger Kuwaitis who were going to Dubai and Europe, and they wanted them to stay at home more. Families. They also wanted Saudi Arabian families to come to Kuwait, and families from other GCC countries. Their objectives were to increase domestic tourism, to reduce leakage, to stop people going away and spending so much money in Dubai and London and Paris and New York. Spend some of that at home. That's what they wanted. And they wanted also this brand to inspire national pride. And from Saudi Arabia, they wanted to increase visitors, and the same from other GCC countries. So what we did was we consulted with all the senior people in all sectors, government, tourism, manufacturing, all areas of public and private sector. We looked at the tourism products, from desert camping to jet skiing to whatever Kuwait had. We then did some research amongst foreign tour operators to see how they viewed, and their clients viewed, Kuwait. We then drafted our ideas for the brand. We held workshops with stakeholders in Kuwait, not just in tourism, but from the senior people in government. We then revised our proposal on the basis of those workshops. We then developed guidelines saying, this is what the brand is, this is how you can put it into practice. I'll show you that in a minute. The brand personality, or the essence that we came up with, which was agreed with everyone, was that Kuwait is, within the region, is quite an open and socially relaxed place, and especially family friendly. It's still very strong culture, blend of culture, strong Islamic values and culture, maritime heritage, Bedouin heritage, which you have all over the region. It was quite stylishly traditional, but it's a modern lifestyle underpinned by traditional values. And I don't know if you would agree, but we were told that Kuwait is one of the places ladies go to buy their dresses, particularly around about Ramadan. That they have a big market for that happening. They're seen to be stylish. Now you may say to me, "Oh, that's the Kuwaitis telling you, Tom." But that's what they said. Then there was this, and I think this is true in many places, intellectual respect for intellect, well-educated, and a strong intellectual tradition, which you also have. And also sporting, a lot of enthusiastic spectators, but also quite a lot of participants who in sport. So this is a mixture of images that we threw together to try and epitomize Kuwait. And the things that came out most strongly were, Kuwait is traditional, but it's also relaxed. It's a very open country, cultural and stylish. Now, at great risk to myself here, would you agree with that as the neighbours of Kuwait? Would you agree with those things? Some not, yes? Right? Does anybody feel, oh, come on, Tom, we're better than them at this, or that's maybe not as good as you're saying? Huh? Or does anybody feel there's something else we should have said, because I'm interested in your views on that. Yeah. Do you have the mic? Yeah, that was an important part. Very different level from Dubai. It's not a Dubai. Much more, well, conservative, traditional, and yeah. So that was fun. It was a lovely project, actually. But I think, and I hope there might be some similarities there you can see in terms of what you're trying to do here as well in terms of domestic tourism. And I want to go quickly through marketing. Quick outline. We're going to look at, I'll come up with what that means in a minute, the customer journey, market segmentation, tactics, marketing the digital era, marketing impact, and credibility. SOSTAC, what does that mean? Well, in marketing, we need to do a situation analysis. Where are we now? What have we got? Objectives, where do we want to be? We want to have 1 million visitors by 2016, or we want to increase our own people's knowledge of their own country and increase domestic visitors. What are our objectives? Strategy, how do we get there? Tactics, what marketing tactics, press, advertising, etc. should we use? What is our activity plan? And how will we measure, control what we're doing? So that's just a sort of skeleton structure of how to develop a marketing strategy. But what I want to just go into what the customer journey is and how they approach a country. And I'm thinking here particularly of foreign visitors. So everywhere in the world, as you said, is highly competitive. So how does anybody here, let's just suppose for a minute, and I know this is not a priority, but let's suppose we want to attract visitors from Norway, let's say, from another country. How does our little man here, our Norwegian, how does he hear about us? Well, you've got a matrix here. At the left-hand end is a message that he gets, which is uncontrollable, but it is cheap. At the right-hand end, the marketing message is the most controllable, but it's expensive. What do I mean? Well, friends tell us, Saudi Arabia is a fascinating heritage. Friends, word of mouth, very important, but you can't control that. You can't buy that. Books and films about the place. You can't buy that. News programs, the way we're covered, as I said, in different news programs, that all helps our potential visitor from Norway to build a picture. In terms of being more controllable, okay, this message, but high cost, advertising is very expensive, but yes, you can control it. Tourism fairs, traditional media, such as press, TV, travel articles, and social media, which is a two-way street. So that's how people hear of a destination, and this is how they access it. So let's say we've got somebody, this is a visitor from the UK. How does it work? Well, above the line is, let's say the UK, where this person lives. But the lower line is the destination, say Saudi Arabia. So this person, let's say Egypt. This person talks to friends, as we said before, looks at website, maybe buys a guidebook, maybe goes to a travel agent goes to a tour operator. This is all in Britain. That tour operator, and maybe they go direct from the website, and you've got various other things happening here. But once they've gone through that route of going to the tour operator, that tour operator then goes to the Egyptian inbound tour operator and buys hotels and tours. So I just wanted to go through that customer journey to be quite clear how it works. And market segmentation is so important because we were talking earlier about who do we want? Families? Do we want where from? Which countries do we want them from? We need to look at their age, their income, their education. Do we want young people? Do we want older couples? Do we want families? And then we need to look at their values, because some people might like what we've got who have the same demographic profile, but others might not who have the same one. So I'm just thinking, time is tight. We need to go, yeah? How long have we got? 10? Okay, right. Well, this is just a way of building up the criteria for our marketing. How big is the market? How much they spend? I'm going to rush through this because I want to get onto some pictures. Because we look at how attractive is the market and how easy is it to communicate. This one is where our most attractive markets are, because they're low cost to reach. They're also the most attractive in terms of the most money they will spend with us. And let me just go through. This is right. So going back to the sort of images we saw earlier of Jordan, this is how Jordan promotes itself within the region. But this is how it promotes itself in Europe, very differently. It also promotes itself in Europe as an activity, adventure holiday, a scuba diving holiday. In terms of creative impact, in terms of the messages we get across, this is Norway talking about cycling. Well, that's quite a nice picture, but how much more exciting is that? So creative impact is important. I'm going to, for the sake of time, I'm going to go quickly through this, and we're just going to talk about techniques: websites, social media, PR, events, partnerships with tourism ministries, collaboration with tour operators, ads in niche media are all important. The travel trade is still quite important for a lot of countries, as we saw in that earlier slide. Bringing tour operators and travel agents and journalists here to see the country, but I'm sorry, let me just go through. I'm going to go through this for the sake of time. Quickly get to objectives. What do we want to achieve? Do we want lots of visitors? Do we want more value and less visitors? Do we want to spread them outside the main season? Do we want to spread them to different parts of the country? Or what do we want? I'm sorry, I'm going to race through this as well because we're not going to have time. But I just want to show how important the digital internet era is. All over the world, people are talking to each other. It's no longer a one-way street. And the problem is that there's too many channels of communication. We're overloaded with information, lots of friends. Finish? Okay, right. And it means that there's more clutter to cut through. 52% of people share stories of their trip when they're on holiday or when they come home. And word of digit is becoming much more important. 33% of people believe us when we say what we are about, but 92% believe what our friends and peers say about us online. Before we had the internet, you used to have to spend about 3 times, talk to somebody 3 times to get the message across. In the digital era, we have to say that same message 7 times to get it across. And the chief executive of Amazon has said, if you make customers unhappy in the physical world, they might tell 6 friends. If you make them unhappy on the internet, they might tell 6,000 friends. So the internet is a friend as well as a potential risk. But we can get people to help do our marketing for us. This is Australia. They allow people to post pictures of their holiday on the Australian website. And by far the biggest posting is Facebook. Right. I'm going to race through marketing impact. How do we know when we've been successful? Well, visitor statistics, visa arrival statistics. We can do surveys about marketing campaigns, look at the value we get from PR coverage, track our brand, look at social media engagement. But informally, we can talk to the travel industry and look at press coverage. And just to sort of wind up, we can do all that marketing internally to our own people, externally to potential visitors, but we have to deliver the promise. Remember I showed you this before about imagery, design style, but behavior is really, really important. And I was doing a branding project in an Eastern European country some years ago, and one of the brand values was unspoilt nature. And I think you'll agree that's a lovely shot. We drove up around this corner, and here's a shot of the valley, but actually, that was the true shot. So suddenly this country that is trying to say we are a country of unspoilt nature that looks after our environment has told me, without any words, we don't really do what we say. And that's what I meant about the honesty of it. And I could have, but I didn't, go on Facebook straight away and say, look, guess where I am in this country, that look at this rubbish, instead of saying, look at this beautiful country. Similarly, in many countries, we may be welcoming visitors. They get to the immigration and customs and they have a very unfriendly experience. So we need to be credible. We need to deliver the promise when we're selling ourselves. So in summary, for branding, branding is our personality. It makes us stand out. It's our essence, not our logo. Market research is important. We must be honest, not wishful thinkers. We need to manage the brand. Marketing is how we communicate. The marketing process I mentioned. Segmentation is important. There's no point in talking to families if the message is going across to young couples about adventure. We need to know who we're talking to. There are cost-effective tactics like PR and social media. We have to be credible, and we have to monitor and refine. And I've just said here, developing or marketing a destination without first establishing its brand is like jumping out of an airplane without a parachute. You might get there, but only one way will be successful. So it's been quite a quick canter through everything. In the 2 minutes we have left, is there anything anybody would like to say or throw at me? Do we have a mic?
Thank you. In most studies and even the companies, branding is usually associated with the word identity. The word identity, I mean. But I didn't see you that focused on this word or on this term.
Say again, sorry, identity.
I didn't see you focused on the word identity.
Well, I'm sorry if that didn't come across. What I was trying to say is the competitive identity, which is how the world sees us. That's what I meant. But also I was trying to cover that we need to have a brand internally as well for our own people so that it inspires their pride. But yeah, it's about the identity in the eyes of the world. You're absolutely right. So if that didn't come across, I apologize.
No, I mean the word identity itself. Usually it is associated with the term branding.
Oh, yeah, yes. Do you remember at the beginning I used the term competitive identity, which I think is a good summation of it. So it's your identity that enables you to compete in the world. So yeah, fair point. Yeah. We had one.
Yeah, my question is related to our case in Saudi Arabia here, as we have around 15 destinations with different tourism product. So do you think we should have different brand for each destination? And at the end, if we have different brands for each destination, it should be harmonized with the country's brand for the whole country.
That's a very important question. The answer is yes. I think every destination should have its own brand. Absolutely. However, if you're marketing outside Saudi Arabia, I think it's really important that there is a strong link between those destinations' identities and the national Saudi identity. There's always a conflict there because wherever I've worked, different parts of a country want to be absolutely separate, which I understand. That's about pride and that's good, but it makes no sense in the bigger market if you go on your... I'll give you an example. In the UK, right, we have Scotland, England, Wales and Northern Ireland. Has anybody heard of Wales? Well, you're all very well educated, so most of you are working, but Wales says we must be strong, and they say because nobody's heard of us, that's why we must have a brand. And we say, well, actually, if you go under the Britain umbrella, you will get more impact, and under that, you can then say how you're different. But if you do that on your own in the big wide world, you will be lost in like a drop in the ocean. So that's a very important question. But yes, regions should have their own identity. Right. Okay. Thank you. Oh, we have one. I'll come towards you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh.
Excuse me. I have just one question. What's the difference between branding of tangible and branding of intangible product, like services and... excuse me? Yes. What's the difference?
Let's say a tangible brand for your heritage would be Al Dahri, right? It's tangible, you can see it, it's a heritage product. The intangible brand would be the concept of the heritage and the culture that flows through it. Is that?
Yeah, that's the one. But which is easier? To do the brand for the tangible, or
Yeah,
I think
it's always easier to do the brand for the tangible, physical product, because exactly, and you can see something physical and tangible.
الهيئة العامة للسياحة والآثار. ملتقى السفر والاستثمار السياحي.